When the person with BPD meets someone who they perceive and deem to be stable, secure, and safe, they may cling on to them for dear life. This person may become their favorite person, or FP for short, and the person essentially becomes the lifeline for the person with BPD. I'm Lise Leblanc, therapist, author, and life coach, and today I'm talking about the complex relationship between someone with BPD and their favorite person. And at the end of this video, I will provide 10 tips for those who are recovering from being in a favorite person role. Before I get started, let me just say that if you have a favorite person, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have BPD. And I will also say that not all FP relationships follow the exact same patterns. It all depends on the severity of the disorder, whether the person with BPD is receiving treatment, as well as the psychological state and attachment style of the favorite person, along with other variables. The favorite person relationship typically starts with the person with BPD idealizing the FP to extremes, devoting all of their time and energy to serve the FP's needs, trying to prove their worth. The FP doesn't really understand why the person with BPD sees themselves as defective, unworthy, or unlovable. It's incomprehensible to the FP why the person sees themselves in such an unfavorable light, because they do have many positive qualities. Initially, the FP believes that the person with BPD just needs a good, healthy, supportive person in their life to help them reach their full potential. However, as time goes on, the person with BPD becomes increasingly fearful of losing the FP, and this causes them to become needy, clingy, and even more insecure, requiring constant reassurance from the FP. It's important to mention that an FP relationship usually starts out as being incredibly rewarding for both individuals, but it tends to get extremely codependent and complicated over a relatively short period of time. I want to read you an email that I received recently, which really captures the essence and complexities that are often inherent in a relationship between someone with BPD and their favorite person. I was a favorite person to someone with borderline personality disorder for about 2 years. We were colleagues and quickly became close friends. In the beginning, everything was great. We had a lot in common. She was authentic, generous, interesting, talented, and a lot of fun to be around. We got along really well, but the relationship quickly started to get more intense. Before I knew it, she was texting me several times a day, and if I didn't answer in the right time frame or in the correct tone, she'd check with someone else to ask if I was okay, or she'd drive to my house to see if everything was all right. I started dreading going to work because every morning she'd corner me, wanting to know if I was okay. Then came the day I spoke of my possible retirement. Let's just say that the relationship went into a complete death spiral. She cried, sobbed, heaved, held on to me. She begged me not to leave her. By this time, I knew the relationship was too much for me. I tried to set boundaries, but this actually made things worse. She tried to see me even more often. Her behavior intensified. As time went on, she started to cut herself at work. She'd walk around with pills in her pocket, of course, me being the only one who knew, and she'd make me promise never to tell anyone. She would get so upset, throwing things around the office when obviously no one was around, and I was the only one to witness this behavior. She would switch as soon as the boss, colleagues, or clients were around. Everyone adored her, and in many ways I did too. But her behavior continued to escalate until I just couldn't take it anymore. One day she took 14 pills at work and called me to her office to help her. That was the last straw for me. I drove her to the hospital and I thought of checking myself in too. I was a shell of a human being at this point, so stressed out about what she was going to do next, feeling completely responsible for her downward spiral and 100% obligated to help. But I couldn't anymore. I had nothing left to give. I ended the relationship, firmly told her that I no longer wanted anything other than a professional relationship. But she continued to beg and plead, asking me how to fix things, contacting me repeatedly despite me telling her to stop. Eventually, after months of breaching my boundaries, I reported her to our boss and she quit soon after. I know I contributed to the decline of our relationship. I am a flawed human being. I made mistakes. Sometimes I told her what she wanted to hear to avoid having to deal with an emotional outburst or episode for the rest of the day. So even though I started out trying to be helpful, trying to give her reassurance, support, and validation, I was betraying my own needs and boundaries. And in doing so, I realized that I was doing more harm than good. Once the relationship ended, I felt so much relief. But then I started worrying. Was she okay? I felt like I'd failed her. I had so much guilt. I still do sometimes. After about 4 months of no contact, she reached out to me because she'd heard that I had an accident. She also told me that she might have cancer. Almost immediately, I felt myself getting pulled back in. Part of me wanted nothing more than to have a normal friendship and relationship with her, to give it another try now that we'd both learned some lessons. But things started to go sour very quickly, and I decided to end the relationship for good. That was about 7 months ago, and I still struggle with my thoughts and emotions around this relationship, and I'm pretty sure that she does too. I miss her sometimes, but her fears of abandonment and other BPD symptoms were way too much for me to handle. Recently, I heard through mutual friends that she has been painting me the villain. At first, it really bothered me that she thought I was the worst person in the whole wide world, but it doesn't bother me so much anymore. I know that my intentions were to help her, and I know that I was coming from a very good place, and I also know that she has an illness that is not her fault either. Now that I'm free, I have a great sense of relief. I realize that I am not cut out to be a favorite person, but it's heartbreaking all the same. I know I did the right thing by ending it, but I'm still grieving and still experiencing intense waves of guilt. My intentions were never ever to hurt her, and I don't believe her intention was ever to hurt me either. And yet we're both deeply hurt by the experience. So as you can see, an FP relationship can start out normally. You may notice that the person with BPD has a lot of challenges, insecurities, and problems in their life, but at the same time, they're incredibly kind, sweet, and fun to be around. They're super generous with their time, their attention, and their energy, often prioritizing your needs above their own, at least in the beginning. But as they become more obsessed with you as their FP, they become very, very preoccupied with you and your life. The person with BPD typically feels like they are unworthy of you and like a burden. And over time, the favorite person starts to feel burdened by the sense of responsibility, pressure, and obligation that develops. And usually, if you as the FP try to discuss your concerns with the person with BPD or set boundaries, they get panicked. And this causes them to get even clingier and possibly go into an emotional tailspin. And no matter how much reassurance, validation, support, or love you provide, the person with BPD will continue to test to see if you care about them, if you matter to them, and there's really no way of passing this test if the person with BPD is untreated, because they will subconsciously continue to try to prove their pre-existing belief that they are unworthy and that they will be abandoned. Okay, so as promised, here are 10 tips on how to recover from a favorite person relationship, specifically after having been in the role of the favorite person. So number 1 is self-reflection. So start by being completely honest with yourself about your role in the codependent dynamic. Reflect on what allowed you to ignore red flags and why you felt guilty or obligated to meet someone else's needs at the expense of your own well-being. If you've had codependent relationships in the past, this can help you understand what attracts you to these types of dynamics. And this is not about beating yourself up or shaming yourself or shaming the person with BPD, but rather it's about extracting the learnings and the wisdom from this experience. Number 2, you may need to go no contact. As the favorite person ending the relationship, it is likely that you've already tried to set boundaries and manage the relationship differently multiple times. But after finding yourself in the same toxic pattern repeatedly, you may decide that it's best to end things. You have likely tried to explain your reasons and provide closure, but if the person with BPD cannot accept your decision, you may need to consider implementing either a temporary period of no contact, but probably a permanent ending. Number 3, examine your boundaries and honestly review your ability to set and maintain healthy boundaries. Consider what fears or needs led you to allow another person to infringe on what feels healthy and comfortable to you. I will be posting a video about boundaries in the near future, so please subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss it. Number 4, learn about the nature of the FP relationship. Acknowledge that FP relationships are typically characterized by intense neediness, a sense of obligation, psychological dependence, and sometimes psychological abuse. And recognize what vulnerabilities or risk factors caused you to get into this type of emotional entanglement. It may be that you are a highly empathetic person who truly and deeply wishes to help others, and that's not a bad trait. But this trait can get you into trouble if you don't have the knowledge and skills to avoid being taken advantage of. And although the person with BPD may not be trying to take advantage of you intentionally, their symptoms may cause them to abuse your kindness in an effort to meet their own needs for safety and security. Number 5, learn about BPD. Understanding that a person with BPD has certain symptoms that include things like extreme fear of abandonment, emotional dysregulation, self-harm, and suicidal ideation and behavior can help you to not take their behavior personally and to see it as a symptom of their disorder. Number 6, take the time to process your emotions. Reflect and write about the relationship's impact on you, and really give yourself permission to feel your own feelings and to grieve the end of this relationship. Number 7 is to seek support. Reach out to friends, family, or support groups to rebuild social connections, and consider speaking to others who have been in a similar FP role to gain perspective and to realize that you're not alone. Number 8, consider seeking professional help from a therapist or counselor experienced in BPD as well as FP dynamics. Number 9, prioritize self-care by engaging in activities that promote relaxation, stress relief, and self-discovery. So channel your energy into self-improvement. Identify and work towards individual goals that contribute to your overall well-being. Number 10, set realistic expectations about the recovery process. Healing takes time and progress may be slow, so be patient with yourself and honor the small victories. In my experience, I have found that it can take a long time to recover from this type of relationship, both for the person with BPD and the favorite person. As the FP, there may be a sense that you abandoned someone that you care deeply about. Leaves you with a deep sense of failure, guilt, maybe a fear that they won't survive without you. But it's very important to remember that the relationship was not healthy or manageable, and that this ending was necessary to maintain your own well-being and your own sanity. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe to my channel. And for more information on the challenges of a BPD-FP relationship, please click on the link above.